Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening on the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. It's just gone 12 PM on Friday, July the 21st, and we are 3 weeks away from the restart of the Premier League and the FPL season. Let's get straight into the questions. Let's see what the community's got for us today. Nisha Hortop says, do you think David Moyes is having a love affair with Fabianski that he never gives Areola a chance to play in the Premier League? Well, they obviously had an agreement last year where Areola played the cup competitions, obviously played in the Conference League final, and Fabianski still played in the Premier League. We have no idea what the circumstance will be in 3 weeks' time. Maybe that's going to be turned on its head. But I would think as it stands, Fabianski's obviously got the head start because he's on tour, and it has to be said, I obviously watched West Ham's game on Tuesday against Tottenham, and Fabianski was outstanding in goal for West Ham, to be totally honest. So I don't think he's quite on the way out yet. I think even though I reflect on the Conference League final, I think the goal that West Ham conceded, which largely gets forgotten about because of the end of the game, I think Areola should have done better with. I think he gets down quite slowly. He also made an error in the semi-final as well against Eze and Crystal at the London Stadium. So I think Fabianski, I know everyone wants Areola in goal because he's 4.0. It's probably most likely at the moment that Fabianski will start the season as it stands. Rima Rodri says, name 3 Canada players currently playing in the Premier League. Clue, one of them is a 4.5 defender listed in FPL. Got me struggling now. You say Canada and I think of Owen Hargreaves. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And Craig Forrest of Ipswich Town. I haven't got a clue. I feel like maybe... do you know what? It's not a defender. I feel like I've seen that Daniel Jebison of Sheffield United might be Canadian. I can't think of the defender off the top of my head. Sorry, you got me on the spot there. Well done. Lewis Stapleton says, are you expecting Eddie Nketiah and Callum Hudson-Odoi to switch to Ghana to play in Afcon in January? Wouldn't have a clue, mate, to be totally honest. Is Callum Hudson-Odoi maybe already switched to someone? Maybe? I'm not sure. I think Chris Hughton's been involved with Ghana, hasn't he? And I know there's a number of players that he got involved. I think like Tariq Lamptey, for example, and there's a couple of others as well. I have not a clue, Lewis, to be totally honest. And he also says, which teams will get affected with players leaving for Afcon 2024, like Bissouma and Pape Sarr. Bissouma I know is one. What I'd say is, look, let's not worry about it from a fantasy perspective because everyone's got to use their first wild card before it starts, right? So it's not a huge deal. But we will cover that on Monday's Chip Strategy podcast. Bakaya Sekoid says, is Mikel Antonio going to join Al Nassr in the Saudi League? There's been some speculation in the last couple of hours. I mean, I'm not Mikel Antonio, so I don't know what's going on in his mind. Maybe he'd want to go, maybe he wouldn't want to go. No idea, mate. We'll see. Look, I think we saw yesterday with Marco Silva that it's almost open game for everybody to be linked and speculated at the moment, bar probably the elite Premier League players and managers at the very top clubs. If anybody's kind of open to being coerced, if you will, to potentially go out there and the financial rewards that might be in play. So, like, would I be surprised? Nope. Laxman Shivaraja says, can you ask Suj why Louis Zhao, a defender signed in January, is not highly rated by David Moyes at West Ham and not playing? If I remember, I'll ask him on Tottenham podcast on Patreon next week, mate. I wouldn't have a clue what Suj's thoughts were. I can't ask him because he's in Turkey at the moment. Christian Pafur says, one Onana plays for Man United, another plays for which Premier League team? What is this? Trivia question, right? Amadou Onana of Everton. I saw something, I want to say it was FPL Viking, maybe. You know the song, Onana, what's your name? What am I saying? Like everybody knows, obviously. He wants to remix it to Onana, what a save. There you go, you can keep that one for free. Andre Traore says, does Ange like the look of Giovanni Lo Celso considering his red-hot pre-season form? Steady with red-hot pre-season form. He had an outstanding 45 minutes on Tuesday, which, again, covered a lot on our Tottenham Patreon podcast on Wednesday. And on that viewing, what I would say is, I would want to keep him around, and I'd suggest Ange Postecoglou probably would as well, because I think he's a natural supplement to James Maddison, because if in that system now, if Maddison was unavailable, you look at that team and ask, well, who is creative, who can run the game in the final third for you, and Lo Celso would be the best candidate at the moment. Now we've also got Tanguy and Ndombele, who missed the game on Tuesday injured, who Postecoglou also wants to have a look at. So there is a couple of alternatives. I would say Tottenham have been trying to get rid of Lo Celso for a fairly cheap fee of about 15-20 million, and if he can perform like he did on Tuesday, I'd be very happy for him to hang around, and I would suggest the manager would probably think similar. Let's be careful with this red-hot pre-season form, though. Like I said, he had a very good 45 minutes. Lombardetto says, will you have Divin Mbama in your FPL team because Saudi bid for Antonio? Mbama scored in that game and performs quite well as a centre-forward. But I think we overlooked these things in pre-season, such as Schumacher's only just come back from a long-term injury, came on and scored, and Danny Ings also scored in the game as well, right? So even if Antonio went and West Ham didn't buy, you've still probably got Ings and Schumacher ahead of him as it would stand, and Jared Bowen can play in that position quite comfortably as well. So that wouldn't be my player of choice at the moment. I mean, as it stands, the 4.5 for me would be Cameron Archer, particularly as it looks like John Duran might be leaving Aston Villa already, which is a surprising news story that's been breaking over the last couple of days, and that would put Archer directly behind Watkins, and because of his involvement with England under 21s, he's certainly going to want minutes. Now Villa are in the Conference League, so I'm sure he's going to get them this season as well. So Archer would be the player of choice at the moment as it stands, but it's 3 weeks to go, and transfers and injuries can certainly impact our decision-making process. Callum Odumbelli says, is Flynn Downs or Connor Coventry going to regularly at holding role because Rice is sold? Connor Coventry probably not, no. Flynn Downs, I've seen this morning, has been linked with a move to Southampton, which would potentially be part of West Ham getting James Ward-Prowse. So that's a news story that I've seen speculated this morning. I think the common sense from many of us would have been Rice goes, James Ward-Prowse for probably half the price, probably makes a lot of sense, although that will still prove quite expensive, I think. Downs would be a good addition for Southampton. As it stands, I think, yes, there's every chance Flynn Downs probably would start for West Ham, but it does sound like there's every possibility that he may be used as part of a Ward-Prowse deal. Javier Alcantara says, what will Tottenham and Wolves do for 4 matches when Heung-min Son and Hwang Hee-chan leave for the AFC Asia Cup in January 20th? Same as what any other team will do who's got Asian players or African players over that time, mate. They'll just pick other players, mate. Tottenham have just added Manor Solomon, so it's a direct potential positional replacement for a short-term period that could mean, I think I did work it out, and we'll probably cover it again on Monday, but I think I worked out the maximum amount of games missed would be 6 to 7. That includes more than half of that as cup games, if, say, a team got to the Carabao Cup semi-finals. And it could be as little as 1 league game if a team goes out in the group stage. So it's no different to having a player injured for 2 or 3 weeks, right? We get a bit hung up about these things. Louis says, hello, James. Who do you think starts up front for England tomorrow? Good question. There's quite a bit of debate on that at the moment between, I think I want to say Beth Mead, Beth England, and I think it's probably going to be Rachel Daly of Aston Villa, who, as Lauren spoke about on Tuesday's pod, was left back at the Euros, but I was top scorer in the WSL this year, and I think Lauren would like her to get Alessia Russo, of course, is in contention to play up front as well, but I think it will probably be Rachel Daly from the start, I think. Jerry Dharma Yu says, hello, James. With the rumours of Mitrovic linked to Saudi Arabia, and if he really leaves plus Marcus Silva, do you think they're at risk of being relegated? At risk? Yeah. I mean, look, let's be really honest about this. As we kind of saw from Leicester last year, that if you're below that level of aspirations for Europe, and Leicester probably would have had those aspirations this time last year, then everybody's at risk. You know, I could not foresee a Brentford getting relegated right now, but they're below that line probably, where there is an element of risk, particularly if they came into injuries, etc. Or if the manager was poached from elsewhere, which there's no suggestion will happen. In Fulham's case, we can look at it and go, Silva goes, Mitrovic goes, there goes all the goals, there goes the manager that's got them promoted, but who knows, right? when Graham Potter left Brighton, everyone thought, right, well, that's Brighton's good spell over, and Roberto De Zerbi's taking it to another level, right? So we shouldn't assume that that's definitive, because a new manager might even reinvigorate them and take them on to better things. You know, someone like Graham Potter, actually, ironically, would probably be a good choice for Fulham at the moment, I should imagine. And if Mitrovic goes, all this, oh my God, Carlos Vinicius is only 5 million. Yeah, Fulham will buy another forward with the money if he ends up going. Which I'm not certain he will do, by the way, because he's got 3 years left on his contract and Fulham have no requirement to sell unless their valuation of the player is met. Alfredo Demetrius says, which player do you expect to play on the left wing for West Ham? Benrahma or Fornals or Cornet or Vlasic? The West Ham need to buy Bowen backup. I think Fornals can operate either side. And I think Cornet could as well. And Cornet can't keep himself fit. I'd be pretty sure that what we saw in the back end of last season, that Benrahma edged away ahead to become first choice. I want to say Fornals might even be 5 million in FPL. And if he's going to play regularly, go, oh yeah, very, very interesting. He's the sort of one where if Benrahma suffered a bad injury in pre-season or was bought by Saudi Arabia or similar, then someone like Fornals might quickly appeal. But I think Benrahma will be the left winger of choice primarily for West Ham as it stands. Heather says, hey James, your thoughts on goalkeeper choice of Onana with either Flecken or Areola? Thanks. So I know most of the community wants Onana to come in at 5. I don't think that's a guarantee because we must remember Manchester United kept the most clean sheets last year. So that alone, you can speculate that perhaps he should be 5.5. I think people have jumped to Ramsdale's 5 million, so Onana definitely will be. I don't think there's a guarantee of that at all. If he is, he's going to be quite popular, I should imagine. But for me, if he comes in at 5 and you want to get him, that's pair with a 4.0. You're not going to play the 4.5. How often are you going to be bothered? Take Onana away to Tottenham in 2 and Arsenal away in 4. Fine. You know, I mean, the Tottenham game's not such a problem. Arsenal in 4, okay, he probably doesn't keep a clean sheet. But you could easily hit save bonus in that. You know, keepers in some of these big games can still hit 3s and 4s even when conceding. So you wouldn't stress about that. The fixtures are very good up until the Manchester derby in game week 10 otherwise. So you just play on Onana every week when I wouldn't waste that 0.5 to go with a Flecken. On Flecken, you know, hopefully in the next week or so we'll get a little bit of clarity maybe on Flecken versus Raya, because as it stands, no one appears to be in for David Raya, so we can't be too sure of what the circumstance there is. Jerry W says, another question. Should Kane move to Bayern, do you expect Richarlison to play up top, or Heung-min Son up top, or even sign a new forward? I think a direct replacement, people have been talking about Dusan Vlahovic, for example, as a potential replacement. I don't think Tottenham would look for a replacement. You can't replace that, so you just adapt what you are as a football team. Richarlison obviously played the second half on Tuesday against West Ham, but Heung-min Son didn't feature at all. And it's worth noting that Manor Solomon performed quite well in his 45 minutes in the first half. So could it be Solomon left and Son up front, or Son left and Richarlison up front? Don't have the answer to that yet, but we should find out on Sunday, or at least have a better understanding of where Ange foresees wanting to use Heung-min Son. I suspect that will be left, but I think we should consider, let's say Kane goes and Richarlison was to be the required forward, then ask yourself who plays up front if Richarlison gets injured. Well, it's Son again, isn't it? So I don't think there's a guarantee either way. My instinct would be, as it would stand, that Richarlison would get the chance to make the position his own and miss many big chances. Atul Balaji says, who do you think will be the first manager to get sacked? That's an interesting one, because when you look through the league at the moment, there's not too many managers I'd foresee being in trouble, right? So you got a few new appointments such as Pochettino, Postecoglou, obviously, Iraola at Bournemouth, who I think will be given time to implement his ideas. They've got a really tough run of fixtures at the start. Obviously, Roy Hodgson's continued at Palace. That might be one where if Palace start badly, they go, oh, have we made a mistake here? Could be. The other 2 promoted or 3 promoted, Vincent Kompany's not going anywhere at Burnley, and there's no reason to think particularly Paul Heckingbottom or Rob Edwards would either. Heckingbottom, maybe Sheffield United might deem at the Premier League, what's the expectation? Their goal will be to stay up. as it will be for Luton, but there's a little less pressure on Luton. They're trying to set themselves up more for the future. Steve Cooper at Nottingham Forest, been given plenty of time so far at Nottingham Forest. They've got a tough start. Could it be? Wouldn't see anything happen with Sean Dyche. And above that, everyone else is pretty safe, I think. Unless one of the big ones really drops off a cliff early on. And one of them probably will start quite badly. But to predict who that'll be, you'd say Tottenham or Chelsea is probably the most likely to have a difficult start because of a bedding in period. But, if Chelsea are 10th after 6 games, which I don't think they will be, if they were, I don't think they're going to change. Tottenham definitely won't change, whatever happens in the opening sort of weeks. It's difficult. It's really difficult to call. Julian Lopetegui's obviously, there's been some rumoured issues behind the scenes at Wolves, but he's agreed to stay on. So, it's a really difficult call. At the moment, on the face of it, you could see all 20 managers completing the Premier League season. Now, we know that won't happen. I guess the sensible answer right now is to say Marco Silva. But I don't think it's sacked. It's probably more likely he's going to walk. Roseanne Fleur says, is Nev Aguerd in your FPL team as they play Bournemouth and Luton Town in the first 4 game weeks? They also play Chelsea, Brighton, Manchester City and Liverpool, Roseanne. Bloomer Caldera says, which team are you supporting to win the AFC Asia Cup 2024? Saudi Arabia, Iran or Tajikistan? Well, I guess my loyalty is with Sunny, isn't it? And South Korea. But the honest answer is, mate, I really couldn't care less. Tiffy Ferrero says, if Cresswell is sold by West Ham, does that make Emerson $4 million a great option? It makes him one of those, like I said, if players are sold or if players get injured, these spaces open. That's why it's really 0 point worrying too much about your 4.0 defender or 4.5 midfield. Like Nakamba's gone to Luton from Villa. So we've got one now who we know is going to start. Admittedly, they don't have a game week 2 fixture. Similar will definitely happen defensively, where it becomes a little. There'll be more options than just say Baldock, Bayer, Amari Bell. Chris Richards of Crystal Palace might be another one if say Joachim Anderson or Mark Gay is sold. So yes, sure. But if West Ham were to sell Cresswell, then I've got to think they don't have another left-footed defender and will probably look to add one. And you should be conscious of that. It's easy to sit there and go, right, Cresswell goes. So Emerson's a lock at left back, but you have to second guess yourself and ask, right, the transfer window still has a couple of weeks to go when I buy him. Could they buy another left back? And the answer in that particular case, I think, would be yes, there's every chance. So that's one I'd be very cautious of. Damien Rozalski says, should Manchester City buy Nicolas Pepe for cheap replacement for Mahrez? Yeah, absolutely, Damien, yeah. I'm sure that's exactly what Pep's got in his mind, mate. Lewis Stapleton says, is Tomiyasu going to play enough minutes at Arsenal as my girlfriend have him in her FPL team? I wouldn't have thought so, mate. It's kind of become a bit of a forgotten man. And with Jurriën Timber coming in, he might just literally be someone they would maybe use as a specialist against one-on-one direct wingers on occasion. And no, I mean, you make a case he's third choice right back now, mate, so don't say that. Javier says, why are Arsenal and Tottenham never do transfer business together? Any players Tottenham sold Arsenal and vice versa? There has been some in the youth. So like Tottenham signed Rowan Ricketts directly from Arsenal back in the noughties for a very small fee. But you're not going to get a big player move between those clubs for a transfer fee, mate. It's just sensible. The two clubs are not going to do business together, mate. It's too much rivalry. It's similar to Liverpool, Manchester United, and Manchester City. Same reasons, mate. Nisha Hortop says, Florian Balogun to Manchester United? Question. Don't see that. Not seen that speculated. I'd be very surprised, to be honest. Rima Rodri says, which of Brandon Austin or Alfie Whiteman will go on loan to the Championship? There's every chance neither. And they're just third and fourth. It might even be that Josh Keeley, as a young Irish keeper, might be given experience out on loan. I don't think it would do any harm for either of them to go out on loan, but it would appear that Brandon Austin's probably got favouritism to be the third. Alfie Whiteman loves the club, so he's just really happy to be a part of the squad as almost a fourth goalkeeper at the moment. I think it would be good for Austin to get the experience. He's a good vocal keeper, but there's lots of work to do. I'd probably higher hopes for him when he played in the youth team, to be totally honest. So yeah, I'd quite like Brandon Austin to go and get a loan in the Championship, actually. But there's always caution with squads and goalkeepers, right? Suddenly your number 2 gets injured, like Fraser Forster's got a minor problem for Tottenham at the moment. And if Loris is injured, suddenly you got Austin on the bench, right? whereas that would become Whiteman on the bench. So I think clubs like Tottenham are pretty conscious of what they're doing with goalkeepers. But yeah, generally speaking, I would like Austin to get some experience. But then Forster is a goalkeeper who, I think because of his frame and size, does tend to pick up niggles. Therefore, you want your third choice to be around. Therefore, I think he probably won't go. And probably similar applies to Whiteman as well, actually. Bukayo Sequoid says, is Joe Rodon at 4 million going to play at centre-back as he has more pace compared to Diaz, Sanchez or 1 point Romero? Does he? I wouldn't say he's quicker than Sanchez, mate. Quicker than Dyer, yeah, I wouldn't say he's quicker than Sanchez. In fact, one of Sanchez's qualities is his recovery pace. So I wouldn't agree with that at all. The answer is for Tottenham, no, probably not. I think there are a couple of French clubs particularly looking at buying him. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up with a Premier League loan or a Premier League move. I think that's possible. He's not quite, unfortunately, for one reason or another, got up to the expectations of what was hoped for him when he signed. Laxman Shivaraja says, Oliver Skip transfer listed to Crystal Palace. Liverpool are signing Cheikh Doucouré. No suggestion at the moment that Oliver Skip will be leaving Tottenham. I think Postecoglou sees him as a player with variety, who can be a box-to-box runner, a presser, or as a backup potentially even for Basuma. Liverpool going in for Doucouré sounds a little more likely. Christian Pafour says Tosin Adarabioyo is leaving Fulham, so that makes Terence Congolo 4 million an option for game week 1 versus Everton. Guys, we're obsessing way too much on enablers, right? We did this on a transfer window show. Fulham has submitted a £15 million bid for Calvin Bassey of Ajax yesterday, so they're looking to add in that position. In any case, you still got Ream and Diop ahead in the pecking order, so no. Andre Traore says, which championship clubs will fit best for Japhet Tanganga and Jed Spence for loan deals? I think both of those individuals would have their sights set higher than the championship, to be totally honest. I think they'll be looking at Premier League clubs or abroad for moves. Lumber Neto says, did you buy Ellis Sims or Durfisoglu in your FPL team to lock the price of 4.5 million forward? No, I didn't. If you still want to take that sort of route, you could probably do that with Sam Sturridge of Nottingham Forest, who's been linked with a move to a team in America. Sounds like he'll probably make that move. It's of no particular interest to me. I'd rather have a player who's got potential in that position. And I think, as I said earlier, at the moment, Archer's got the potential for minutes. Callum Odumbelli says, hi, can you name 4 African nations playing currently for Everton? Guys, what is this, trivia day? Onana's got to be one, hasn't he, I think. Ghana Gay. That might be all for me off the top of my head. Doucouré, maybe Doucouré. Oh, is he French? Not sure. Actually, a question now. Is Onana French as well? I think maybe. Not sure. Dave Hannigan says, do you think Sky FF is a better game than FPL? And if so, as I do, why? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to wrap that up very briefly and say, me and Luke Williams had a brief discussion about this at the start of a Sky Fantasy podcast on Wednesday. The answer is yes. I've covered this quite a bit previously. Just like the scheduling around planning, etc., is very engaging for someone like me who likes to plan out moves, etc. So I think that the game is more competitive as well in terms of it's far more difficult to fit in all the players that you want to, for example. So yeah, prefer Sky, and there's a big prize at the end of it. Jim says, hi James, what do you think about building a team with a strong bench? For example, it seems perfectly viable to have Enciso and Watkins as your 5th and 3rd mid and forward, can even play the bench boost early. We'll discuss the idea of an early bench boost maybe on, in fact no, we will touch on it on Monday's podcast. In terms of Watkins as a 3rd forward, that's someone I would never ever want to bench. Never. Go to Newcastle, lose 5-1 the opening day and score. It's not a player I would want to bench. Clear talisman. Scored more FPL points than any other Villa player by a long way. Douglas Luiz was 2nd, by the way. So that's a player I'd never want to bench, because the 1 goal for him could very comfortably be 9. In terms of Enciso, again, how often do you actually want to leave him out? I understand what you're saying. Yeah, sure, you can put good players in the team together, but is it necessary? You have to ask yourselves, can you go for the 4.5 mid and spend that million somewhere else? Now, sure, you can go down this route, and I see quite a number of beginning to speculate on the idea of having, multiple defensive options rather than 4.0s, for example. So, sure, you can do it. I would, if I was doing that, I'd look at more, probably rather than rotation, with say a forward like Watkins, which I wouldn't be keen on, and looking at doing it maybe with some defensive players for when they have good fixtures. That's not terrible. Then you're spending 11 million on rotators rather than what we saying 13.5. It's too much. Ilan Melchior, sorry mate, says, what's the feeling amongst Spurs fans on Manor Solomon, rotation player? How many in front of him in his position for the starting 11? It's worth saying even Perisic also played really well on the left wing for Tottenham in the second half on Tuesday. Now, again, Perisic is a player we thought would probably leave. He's on big wages. Perisic almost certainly would not be first choice before anybody gets too excited from an FPL perspective. There's obviously competition there with Solomon and obviously, of course, Heung-min Son. So there's much to learn on Son, I think, in the next week or so. In terms of Solomon, quite impressed with his debut. Lively, tricky player, combined well with Sergio Reguilon in the first half in terms of his understanding and his weight of pass over short distances. Looks quite good as well. So looks a good player. If you're asking from an FPL perspective, that's a no at the moment. Colin Bugler says, do people touting to get Vinicius in their squad think that if Mitrovic does go, Fulham are not going to go and get a replacement? Exactly what I said, Colin. And, you know, Emerson Palmieri is another example where you just got to think about it logically. So, right, so what, West Ham are just going to go into the season with just one left back? And it would perhaps be that they'd buy an understudy. But in that case, with Fulham aren't going to take 50 million from Mitrovic and just leave the money in the bank. Going to go and get something clear. Owen Wilson says, hi James, which Spurs players that were fringe players or were on loan last season will have a bigger role to play this year? Again, really tough to say because a lot of them performed very well on Tuesday. Some of the more offensive players, quite interesting, like Lo Celso's mentioned, and Dombele, another one who I guess would be categorised as an 8, I would guess. Jed Spence wasn't involved, not quite ready from a fitness perspective, so we may see him in the friendlies on Sunday or Wednesday. Again, Joe Rodon similarly wasn't involved, perhaps, and I mentioned him earlier, perhaps Postecoglou might like him. Reguilon, offensively, quite interesting, but defensively bad. The real one, of course, is Destiny Udogie, and it is Udogie, as I've now learnt now. Who I think there's every chance will start at left back at 4.5, and his one should be monitored in pre-season quite closely. Golden Goal Fantasy Football says, how many goals/assists is Porro getting next season, boss? Well, considering that Udogie I think may get favouritism at left back, there's every chance that Porro won't be a regular starter in that circumstance. Again, this needs monitoring properly in pre-season. I think the combinations he may be looking for at the moment is Porro plus more defensive left back. So be that Ben Davies, who had to play centre back the other night because of a shortage at centre half, or Udogie with Emerson Royal. I think that those are the sort of combinations that he might be considering. Porro does also have the ability, again, perhaps, you know, with Jed Spence joining the squad, we might get a look at Porro at right wing, for example, in the next week or so. So it's really so early to make that sort of assumption. And how many goals/assists he gets is very dependent on where he plays and what sort of minutes he's going to get. But my instinct would be, right now, probably not as many as people think. I'll leave it at that at the moment. Simon Smith says, if you could wipe all memories, go back to the start and choose who you grew up supporting, whose fan base would you love to have been a part of? I'm not reading it out loud, mate. No, it wouldn't, mate. I'm very happy with the football team I support. Thank you very much. Matthew Derbyshire says, no question for me. Just hope you and the family are well. No clue how you find time to play FPL or Sky with a little one, let alone a podcast too. I do, Matt, and I very much recommend we talk about it a little bit on the mental health podcast with James Wilson. We're going to release on Patreon around about 3 o'clock today. Literally that specific subject gets a little bit of discussion. Prioritising, and remember that FPL and Sky is not the priority in my life. It's not even second. Stephen Moore says, hi James, if Heaton moves to Luton, would you be on him and Areola for an 8 million goalkeeper combo? No, mate. There is speculation with Tom Heaton and Luton, but I think Dan Ashby, our Luton correspondent, would probably reliably say that if Heaton comes in, he would probably be coming in as a number 2, and they'll probably go and get another goalkeeper as well. So, no, unless there was absolute clarity, and considering the season starts when the transfer window would be open, that would probably be a no. You'd be very tempted by him if we got right towards game week 1, it looked like Heaton was going to start at Brighton. Then there's obvious, and none of the other 4.0s did look like they were going to start. Then there's obviously a clear attraction for wanting to go to him, but at the moment the answer would be no. Areola, of course, if we do think he's going to start with that ownership, yes, we want some of that, I think. Aaron Wilson says, hi James, you got any collabs with other FPL content creators coming up in pre-season? No, that's it done. And for those obviously watching on YouTube now, if you're following the bar at the bottom, you can see the full schedule for Correspondent Week going across the bottom of the screen as well, which obviously begins, will kick off at 7 p.m. on YouTube on July the 31st with Nottingham Forest Mark Southern. 20 podcasts between then and 2 p.m. on the Saturday at end with Sam Murray of Brighton and Hove Albion. No other collabs with anyone else. I've had a few people ask me for guest spots over the next couple of weeks, and I cannot commit to it. I've got Nico on holiday this week and next week, so I'm doing the video edits as well. Hence, those on YouTube will have noticed everything's been on Zoom at the moment. It just makes my life a lot easier rather than having to film behind a camera and sit in front of it. As you can imagine, it's probably a little bit tricky. And then that week after is Correspondent Week, and then the season starts, and we're going full FPL mode for the last couple of weeks, obviously before the season starts. So no, I think the one I've just recorded with this morning with James Wilson, one of our patrons for the mental health pod later today, I think that's it actually in terms of guests, other than the correspondence obviously, between now and the start of the season. FPL Sandish says, hi James, what do you think of Jacob Ramsey and Visser's FPL assets start the season with? Well, I've not seen any clarity on Ramsey's injury status, and I think it was assumed that he would probably miss game week 1, so I'd need to have a double check on that, to be honest, because he obviously returned early from England under 21 duty and was going for a scan, and the prognosis in the days afterwards seems to suggest he would probably miss the start of the season. If that's the case, it's an obvious no. If he's available, then I don't mind it, but he's going to be behind everyone else in terms of pre-season fitness, and I do think that's quite important because that's likely to see his minutes limited in opening games. Visser, yeah, he's interesting. I think one to keep an eye on next couple of weeks. We've got a good opening run of fixtures. Brentford is quite nicely priced. It's a nice alternative to Mbeumo, I think, particularly if you want to go with a free up front system. So yeah, Visser of the two, I'd want to keep a closer eye on. Dread FPL, my friend, says, afternoon, mate. Probably been asked loads, but your thoughts on Foden's chance of being a regular starter? Cheers. Hi, and I'm very keen on him. I've stressed that quite a lot over the last couple of weeks. Even before the price were unveiled, pretty keen on him, almost irrespective of that price. And the price came in lower than it should be, as it has done for many of those midfield players. So yeah, I'm very keen on Phil Foden. Again, there's lessons to learn over the next couple of weeks in terms of potential positioning, potential competition, the implementation of perhaps some more younger players. Obviously, Mahrez is going. There's Bernardo Silva now definitely stayed. There's lots of impacts of that, but yeah, if I had to lock my team in now, mate, Phil Foden be in it. I can certainly say that. FPL Planet says, haven't invested much into FPL drafting yet, but looking at drafts from the community, I find the lack of Salah and Trent is intriguing. Thoughts? The reality is, you just spread your money better without them, don't you? Right? So it's personal choice, right? I'm not going to tell anyone go and get Salah and Trent. It's not something you don't already know, right? They're potentially great assets. Trent's interesting in the sense if you compare him to the mids like Martinelli, it's the same price, for example. Look at what those three Arsenal attacking mids did last year. If they repeat it, and I think they're capable of doing better, by the way, then in the 200 point bracket. Now, for Trent to be hitting that, you need Liverpool to vastly improve defensively, and he's got to up his attacking numbers. Now, the assumption at the moment is he will improve his attacking numbers, and that makes him quite powerful. And we also have to consider with both Trent and Mo Salah that if you want to get them, it's going to certainly take a rejigging of your team to get them in, should you want to. One sacrifice tends to leave for many at the moment that they're going with the other. That's not the case for everyone. I would say as it stands now, I'm more likely to start with Trent than Salah, personally. But I'm very open to changing my mind on that, particularly I was going to say on Salah's pre-season form, that's incorrect. Probably on some of the performances of other Liverpool players in pre-season might have an impact on that, plus my own feelings on Trent as well, because I don't see me going with both. I don't see me going with both. I think it's just too many good value players in that sort of 8 to 9 midfield bracket that I'd like to have a piece of. That means there's a sacrifice to be made. So if you're of the opinion that you've got to have them, by all means absolutely have them, but I completely understand why people are looking elsewhere. Hollistow says nice combination of shirt and background. Literally didn't give that a thought, mate. Didn't iron the shirt, didn't do nothing. You probably tell I haven't ironed it. Antonino Gitto says, howdy James, great to have Planet FPL back. It's been a few weeks now, mate. Can we get away with 4-5-1 formation in FPL if we might wildcard early? The teams you can make with that are insane. Yes, there's also some very good teams you can make with 4-4-2, by the way, and even different alternatives like 3-5-2, of course, as well. So if you absolutely know that you're going to wildcard early, yes, then I'm more open to it. But one of the things we'll discuss on Monday is, like, for what? And part of that will involve a conversation around what been in your Manchester City and Arsenal players, or what is it for? That's the conversation we have to have on Monday. But for longer term, I don't like it. Templates move, right? The template in the middle of the season is never the same as the template at the start of the season. It will move, and with it, often the formation moves, and you're just handicapping yourself massively in that system. Now, if a Watkins gets injured and Cameron Archer's going to start the season, or Balogun goes on loan somewhere and looks like he's going to start, then, for example, that changes the game where, yeah, you can use that and the choice between, say, that 4.5 player and perhaps a defender, and definitely go that way, perhaps. But I'm not keen, personally. You've got to know that you're wildcarding early, I think. Well, you haven't got to, but you're going to end up thumping things about. It's almost inevitable. And if you really restrict yourselves, I think if you go down that route, you probably need to start with Haaland, Salah, Trent. And that might be where you're leaning to. But if I was going to start that way, that's probably what I'd want to do. Because if you need to get a forward in, and then you need to get one of them in, you are doing surgery, and you possibly are wildcarding. Sweezal Fernan says, hello. Anthony also says, if you could choose one current Premier League player to do a one-off Planet FPL podcast with, who would it be? One current Premier League player to do a one-off podcast with? I mean, to be honest, the first name that comes to mind is Harry Kane, right? Sit him down, handcuff him, and say, sign a new contract, bitch. So, although I'm more open to most to the idea that, it might be the right time for the football club. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the person that comes to mind most. I think. For an alternative, I'll throw James Madison's name in, because he whenever he's done interviews and the odd appearance on things as a studio guest, he does come across extremely well and a very knowledgeable footballer. So James Madison would be an alternative name to put in there at the moment. Carlos Bambo says, how many of your first 11 in FPL are you dead set on, do you think? I think 4. And there's not any shocks in that 4. It's probably Haaland, Rashford, Saka, Estupiñán. I think it would be the 4. And Phil Foden is 80 to 90% in. The rest, I'm very open to at the moment, to be honest. Very, very open to. Carlos, that's what we've done. Owen Wilson says, would Tony be a good buy for Spurs if Kane left? Even with the ban in mind, could be good to get him cheaper now and let Richarlison fill the role till he's available. Yeah, look, I think that's the sort of player Tottenham potentially will look at, but I've also said I think there's a strong possibility that if Kane did leave, that Tottenham wouldn't directly replace him and would look at strengthening other areas of the team and change how they play, which would probably involve quicker players. So, we can get hung up on this, Kane replacement. You can't really replace it, can you? You can do as well as you can with someone like a Tony, but you can't replace Harry Kane completely. Tony would be the perfect fit from that perspective, but obviously he's not going to play till January either. So, would Tottenham buy him now for January? No. Would they save the money and buy him in January? Maybe. I mean, next summer would probably be more likely, right? And he'll probably feel a little bit of loyalty to Brentford as well over this period, I should imagine. JP says your current wildcard plan. Don't have one, but if I had to tell you something right now, probably game week 8. JP says best place to get pre-season friendlies info. Google. Honestly, on the Premier League, just literally Google Premier League friendlies, and the first thing that should pop up is a link to Premier League teams, their fixtures, and their results. And in the results, there's a a link to the report from the given club on the game. So that's quite straightforward. A shout out all about FPL on Twitter though as well, who I know is keeping something together from that perspective, and I'm almost certain Scout must be as well, to be fair. Francis Logan says, who'll be top league scorer if Haaland, Mo Salah, Kane all break a leg? Good question. Answer's probably Julian Alvarez, isn't it? He should play up front every week for Man City, so it might be the answer. You could put people like Saka, Rashford, Son into that bracket. Perhaps a Nunez, maybe. I wouldn't discount an Ollie Watkins even. So, but my initial response onto that is Alvarez, because play every week for City. Nikolai says, no idea what West Ham are doing this transfer window. Bit odd. Time to get moving, I would suggest, yes. Cole Valencia says, for me this year, the decision seems to go with Trent or go without and have a better midfield. Who do you like better, Bruno or Martinelli? Martinelli. 0.5 saving. Yeah, would be Martinelli for me of the two, I think, personally. I don't see me starting with Bruno. Martinelli is going to be very close for me. I think he's the outstanding 8.0. So if I start with an 8.0, it's going to be him, I think. Nicola also says, Wolves and Fulham in trouble, in my opinion. I keep speaking about Wolves. I feel like I'm bashing them, so I'm going to skip them. Fulham I've already spoken about, obviously, on the stream. Asil Salem says, hi James, fun question. Who is the weakest starting player for the top 7 Premier League teams? What's top 7? Like, does that include my team and Chelsea or not? I'm going to assume you mean the big 6 and Newcastle. It's got to be a Tottenham player, to be totally honest. At the moment, might be Eric Dyer. And I've got a lot of love for Eric. That might be the answer at the moment. I'm just trying to think around other teams and what they do with what they've got currently at the moment, which is rubbish when this has to go out for an audio podcast as well. It's not a City, is it? Well, maybe thinking about City players. It's not Arsenal either. Would it be harsh to say Dan Burn, maybe? That does feel really harsh. Yeah, that does feel really harsh. I'm going to stick with my original answer, I think. FPL Planner says, where do you think Harry Kane will play? Who do you think Harry Kane will play for this year? I think he'll play for Tottenham, mate. As it stands, that's the most likely. He's with the football club. And as I said, when Tom Campbell was on the pod on Monday, unless Bayern Munich come up with the money, he's not going anywhere. So it's in Bayern's court, and even if they do come up with the money, still no guarantee it happens. So at the moment, he's most likely to play for Tottenham, mate. Patrick Flanagan says, there seems to be no consistency in the amount of pre-season games of the team. Look, different teams doing different travelling, different structures. I think Manchester United have got the most amount of fixtures. Some of the promoted teams might add fixtures. So I'd noted Luton have added another game in the last 24 hours, I think, on Saturday, August the 5th, for example. So it is something you need to monitor. Burnley have got no fixture that weekend. I'm sure they'll add one, for example. So I wouldn't read too much on that. And some of these as well are not listed. They're behind closed doors friendlies for a number. So the competitive levels be quite similar. I mean, Burnley, for example, Burnley came back for pre-season way earlier than everybody else. So who knows if that's a factor. Patrick also says, City play about 6 and United about 10. Why is this? Surely that will affect United later in the season. Not necessarily. Minutes will get shared around and stuff. Maybe United will start better than City with that in mind. This narrative can be spun either way. Birth Media says, you think Chelsea can upset the apple cart and reach top 4 after a disastrous season last season? Can they? Yes, of course, absolutely. The injury to Wesley Fofana was a real shame. And I guess it'll be about adding the right quality in the next 5 weeks or so. That midfield area does need a bit of work. It needs the new attacking players like Jackson if he's going to play, and Kunku will definitely play. We're just not 100% sure of where at this stage. Need to hit the ground running. It needs improvement in terms of goal output from your likes of Madueke, Sterling, Mudryk, whoever plays in those positions. It needs them to be defensively better. It needs things like Ben Chilwell and Reece James to stay fit. But yeah, they're very capable. And remember as well that he doesn't necessarily have to be fourth this year. Fifth might be enough for Champions League because of the restructure of the Champions League. We won't factually know that till nearer the end of the season. Probably not till sort of the quarterfinals can we probably get a gauge on what it means. But there's every chance if English teams do well again in Europe, then it probably will be fifth. Will probably be enough. So yeah, Chelsea are definitely in contention for Champions League place. And look, if it goes to fifth, then I think that really gives the likes of Brighton and Villa serious ambition to think that they could possibly be involved in that sort of thing, subject to how their own involvement in European competition this year affects them. Nikolai thinks Howe could get booted. I don't see that. Newcastle would have to have a disastrous start, I think. I think they're quite calm about what he's doing there at the moment. Jack M says, any Tottenham defensive assets we're getting early on? Not until we see more. Doggy needs, as I said earlier in the stream, worth monitoring over pre-season. Alejandro says, bit of white noise in the background. I think it means white noise. Sorry about that. Andre Klim says, Onana's Belgian. Yes, he is Belgian. I do know that. Well, it's easy once you're told. J. Law Broski says, hey James, hope your summer's going all good. What are your thoughts on us needing a mid who can open up defences after missing out on Szoboszlai and Madison? Do you think we need one to try push top four? To clarify, it's a Newcastle fan. No, I mean, look, midfield three of Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali plus Joel Linton / Willock is pretty good. It's pretty good. I think that's the main one is that with Tonali will probably fix up a little bit. You missed Longstaff actually when he didn't play last year. Fix up an improvement on that side of the pitch. Although, as I said on Monday's pod, I'm not convinced that Tonali will definitely start the season. It will certainly become first choice, but it might be a little bit like with Sven Botman that they ease that process in. No, I think the club's pretty conscious of not going too hard too soon. I get Champions League football this year as well that you'll need more bodies, but Tonali provides that. If you can keep the likes of Joel Linton, Willett, Longstaff fit and stuff, then 5 across there is okay. Maybe want one more. I don't buy so much into the creative idea because I think a lot of, let's put it a different way. You did very well without one last year. Guimaraes probably is going to play the 6th role again. If he played higher, that's arguably your solution. But I don't think that's the plan as it stands at the moment. Unless a new deep lying player was added that would free him. But I don't see Joel Linton and Willock not being involved during the course of the season, to be honest. So I think you'd be okay. And you good young kid there in Elliot Anderson is worth saying as well. And they're probably a little bit conscious of not blocking his pass. So I think that's a 6. I think that's okay this season as it stands. Keith Rowley says, Arsenal City surely score a bucket load of goals to start the season. Don't see why triple Arsenal attack and double City is being overlooked. Who says it is, mate? That might be exactly what I do. Relic Returns says, afternoon, James. Let's have your top 4 relegation and Europa predictions. No pressure. Oh, Jesus. Okay, in order, top 4. City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United. That's no slight on Newcastle at all. That's just, I think they might go quite deep in the Champions League actually, and it's new. It's going to be new for the players having that regular, twice a season, high level intensity. That's all. If Newcastle finish 4th again this season, I think that'd be very, very good. By the way, behind Newcastle, probably favour Chelsea at the moment because of the no European competition, and then probably my own, to be honest, over Brighton and Villa, which feels wrong. But again, it's again I look at Brighton and Villa and I think, boy, you could go really deep in Europe, and that will have an impact. The two intense teams, it will have an impact. I'm fairly sure. Those two clubs are very much heading in the right direction, but there's every chance it will have an impact. What I'd say is, I think, if Chelsea and Tottenham have bad seasons again, we can expect Brighton and Villa to do similarly in terms of what they performed last year. Relegation, unfortunately, Luton and Sheffield United are the smart answers at the moment. But I think both have reasons to feel optimistic about their chances. The one I'm worried about, I keep saying it, is Wolves. And to be honest, the main reason not to say Wolves at the moment is the manager. Because I think the manager is very good. But if you ask me to pin me right now, I'm going to say Luton, Sheffield United and Wolves, unfortunately. VL says, what's up, James? Love to see you back. Do you think Sisso will start for Brighton? Yes, but as covered again, I'd very much recommend this in sort of the last 10 minutes of Monday's podcast with Tom Campbell. We speak about the amount of attacking options they have, add in European competition after game week 5, and I think we can expect rotation. But as it would stand, probably yes. Jack M says, where's Madison going to play in the team for Spurs? You think he'll be a good FPL asset? So he played left-sided 8 role that was kind of 8-10 hybrid on Tuesday in possession, and without possession he sat alongside Kane in a 4-4-2 kind of mid-block. I'm not massively keen on Madison as an FPL asset, and I guess he didn't play badly on Tuesday, but there were a lot of players who played really well, and I wouldn't put him in that list. It was first game, probably a little bit nervous and stuff. Let's see how he does in the next couple, but I wouldn't pick him above Phil Foden at the same price right now. That's my take. Now, I might feel different in the next couple of weeks, but that's how I feel at the moment. Billy Taylor says, howdy Jimbo. As a West Ham United fan, I don't see why we aren't going all out for James Ward-Prowse. We're in need of a leader and someone to try and replicate Rice's 6-8 role. Set pieces for our big boys, an added bonus. You can't replicate Rice's role because it's an extremely unique player. And I think replacing that's near impossible, so you can only replace with something different. Certainly would add to your set piece threat with Ward-Prowse. And as I said near the start of the stream, Billy, it does sound like that move for Ward-Prowse is now being made. Josh Obby says, what do you think about Eze? I am a Palace fan, hard not to put him in. Yeah, great asset. He's one I keep looking back at. And how did he get that many points last year when Vieira kept leaving him out the team for so long? So, impressive. My biggest concern at the moment isn't Eze, it's his teammates. So, Zaha's gone, and Elise we know is going to miss the start of the season. And that's potentially a different Palace. Now, again, you can spin the narrative either way. You can say, whoa, that makes him a clearer talisman. Think back to after that result at Leeds and was Eze or Elise, wasn't sure. Now you go, well, it's definitely Eze, quite agree, but it also means that the other teams know it's definitely Eze and stop Eze, and I'd be quite conscious of that at the moment. So that's more off-putting than encouraging for me personally at the moment, but I certainly wouldn't tell anyone don't get him. There's clear talisman potential there. Ready Can Dance says, hi James, do you agree that Jota is one of the most underrated players in the league? He could go into any front three in the world and no one would complain. Also, who are Liverpool's strongest front three? I mean, to put it a different way, I think Liverpool's strongest front three, in my opinion, is Diaz, Núñez, Salah. In my opinion, it doesn't include Jota. But I accept that he's probably a better finisher currently than Núñez, who's more erratic. But I love the chaos about Núñez, personally, and I think the chaos is good for Liverpool. It's probably not helped by the fact and I know Núñez has played wide quite a lot, particularly in Diaz's absence, but Jota can fulfil those roles also as a 10 as well, is quite adaptable. I don't think that particularly helps him. To say he'd get into any front three, I mean, no one would complain. Okay, yeah, sure. If you had Diogo Jota as your centre forward, no one's going to complain, I don't think. Yeah, sure, I agree with that. But I'm not sure we'd get into quite as many as you think. Headley M says, Onana is from Cameroon. Thoughts on price of Onana? Andre Onana is from Cameroon. The question was about Amadou Onana earlier. Thoughts on the price of Onana? I mean, if it's been given, I haven't seen it. It'll be 5 or 5.5, and that will dictate how interesting he is, as I covered earlier on. It says, afternoon, what's thoughts on Shaw versus Onana? I think Onana will be a BPS magnet. What's that based on? His distribution? Could be. But Luke Shaw's been a bit of a bonus magnet as well, hasn't he? So I wouldn't be so convinced, personally. Onana doesn't become an auto pick for me at 5 million if that's what he comes in at, to be totally honest. So it's a wait and see. But at 5, he definitely goes on the list. At 5.5, it's no interest. I'd put it that way. At 5.5, I'd rather have Shaw. That would be my take. All right, guys. I think that's all the questions covered. Thanks very much for everyone who contributed on the chat. Thanks for joining in live. If you're on the stream now, hit the like button. It'd be very much appreciated. Hit the sub button. All that jazz. So you'll be back with me on Monday for, as said, a very much promised chip strategy podcast. Tuesday, Clayton will be joining me for the People's Poll. Topics will go out for selection on Twitter over the weekend. Suj will be with me for the Sky Fantasy podcast on Wednesday. Thursday, Clayton will be with me for the transfer window show, and it already looks like there's going to be plenty to talk about again. Friday, not Ask James next week. That's going to be available for Intermediate Plus and Advanced tier patrons on Wednesday next week. Next Friday, available to all of you, something a little bit different. The guys from the EFL Fantasy podcast, Jamie, Dan and Angus will be joining me for, I imagine will probably be quite a lengthy gaffer preview for the Championship Fantasy game. If you'd like to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Just leaves me to say to everyone, remember to be nice to each other, and cue music please, man child.